This is a video about a very simple project finance model and then how to start coding in VBA. And the reason I'm making this is I received a very nice message from Simone, and he said also, if you have any tutorials on the basics of VBA coding, I'd really appreciate your help. And this is a situation where, and I haven't put this in the website yet, but I will, where I made a very simple project finance model. We have a lifetime of 20, some cash flow available for debt service, a little bit of growth, some capex. We have a target DSCR, and I'm going to make the debt just a level payment debt. So to figure out the debt, I need to do a goal seek. And I want to see what happens if I change the life of the project, if I change the cash flow, and I want to make a data table, a two-way data table, a one-way data table, a bunch of data tables. But when I make a data table and I change the target DSCR, or even if I don't, I'm going to have to use a goal seek in this process. So let's start making our simple model. Now, no matter how simple the model is, we better make a timeline. So I'll press the number 1, Alt-EIS, tab, 40 years. And then we'll put a little, so this is our period. And then we'll put a little switch, or everybody calls it a flag or a mask or something else except me. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to make, and I better start at 0 for the, and I just violated it, start at 0 for the capex period, and then we'll copy this, and I better go to false after year 20. And then, as always, Alt WFF, if you've got an English keyboard, we'll put the dates and the periods right at the top. Okay, so now let's put some of our operating analysis. And in the operating analysis, let's put CFADS. And how about, I'm going to be so lazy and I'm just going to take both of them and I'm going to do all sorts of bad practice here where I start and I put a different formula in the first than in the second, and I feel very bad about that. Now I have generic macros open, and that means I pressed Shift Control R to put it all the way to the end, but of course I made a mistake and I forgot to multiply this by the true or false. Okay, I suppose I could have multiplied the first one. And then now let's now let's put our, why don't we put together our capex, which again is up here. Okay, and then I'm going to compute free cash flow because I always do that, and as the very first step to see if I've got a reasonable kind of analysis, that was Shift Control R. I can press Shift Control D, project, which is pre-tax project IRR. Excuse me, I'm trying to go quickly here. Oh, shit. Tab. Oh, man, I can't type anymore. Okay. Oh, that's too little. I better put, and then let's put the debt in. Okay. And let's put an opening balance and put less the repayment and a closing balance and an interest. Okay, and the interest is going to be the 4%, and our closing balance to start with will be, I'm just going to put a number in. That's what we're going to do our goal seek on, or have a goal seek on. I'll put 900, okay? Let's make that equal to 900. We don't know what that should be. We're going to make a goal seek. And then I said it's going to be a 15-year debt. And we'll take our very first balance. How about this? Divide it by the 15. This might be bad form again. And how about Shift Control 1 to format, and we'll subtract it. And let's put a minimum on here and use the opening balance for the minimum to make sure that we kind of stop this. So I just press Shift Control R and we stop it. And then let's put the interest here as the interest rate times the balance of the debt. And then we'll get the debt service. I'm probably typing really loudly. How irritating. SERVICE. Did I get that spelled out right? Okay. And then now we can compute the DSCR. And when you compute the DSCR, it's probably a good idea to put a little if statement with the debt service at the bottom and take the free cash flow divided by the debt service, because when you do that, it gives you a false at the end. Now, it's even better, really, because I know this never works, to make this one greater than some tiny little number, okay? And let's press Control-Alt-C, 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 Control-Alt-C. And let's color this inputs and color the titles. We'll put conditional formatting for the true and false. And we didn't take anything from another sheet. And I don't really have why don't, just to show you how it works, we'll put the first two columns as rows as black. Now that occasionally happens when it goes to another sheet. Don't worry about that, or at least not too much. And then we have a nice color, and you haven't wasted so much of your stupid time with this. Now the minimum DSCR is just the minimum of all this. Now I tell people, I remember things like when Trump got elected president. I started to cry. I remember things, and I got really. But the one thing I remember more than, you remember where you were. God damn, why can't I get any words out? You remember where you were. I remember when John Lennon was shot, and I remember exactly where I was. I was taking some accounting test. Oh, how sad. And so what I'm going to talk about now, what did I just do? Did I somehow screw up this thing or whatever? I remember when I made my first macro, and the very first macro I made was a goal seek macro. So we put a difference here, and we're going to set this difference to 0 right here, this difference to 0. How about if I call this diff over here and I name the cell? Okay, I'm going to set that difference to 0 by changing the balance of the debt. I'm going to name this debt. I right arrow, shift control F3, okay? All right, and then what's going to happen is, I press shift control M. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to make a goal seek macro. I still have circular references. What the hell? I hope that doesn't mess everything up. And we're going to set that difference to 0 by changing the debt. But before I do that, I'm going to record a macro. Okay, so that now, and we're going to have to then make a data table with this macro. So that's really what I'm trying to show you is a little bit of data table analysis. Okay. So I'll just call this goal seek. And this, again, I'm just showing, this is supposed to show some of the basics of VBA. So the first thing we do is let Excel tell you how to make a program. And most people know how to do this. So I'm going to set that difference equal to 0 by changing the det. Now, most people know the next thing I'm going to do as well. So I stop recording the macro, and then I go to the developer tab and go to the macros. I wish that I don't know how to automatically have it go to this sheet. I should know that. And I obviously press edit. I didn't seem to be able to do that. Now, when you make it, I don't know what I did to make it false. I'm going to set this thing. I called it diff. I think I can remember it. And I got there by changing det. And I need that because if you ever insert or delete a line, it's gonna mess you up. So that's the first thing you do. And that's pretty good because now I can change something. Let's change the cash flow to 110. And then instead of running the goal seek, I just put and I made another video on this anyway, okay? I'm sorry, I'm being a little redundant here, okay? But we make another thing and we just press the goal seek button, okay? So then it shows you how much debt can be issued with all of this. All right, now let's make a data table. To make a data table, maybe we should put the equity IRR. And you know what we've done is we've really, in a way, made a project finance model. That's how easy really it is. Because the equity, well, I'll put the equity cash flow, okay, and then we'll take the cash flow minus the debt service after that, and I put equal instead of minus. When I put minus, it'll take away this, and then I can put equity IRR. Now, let's say that I want to do a few things, okay? I would like to see what happens if I change the DSCR. So I'm going to put a DSCR over here. And I'm going to say, what happens if I make it 1.1? I'm going to put Alt-EIS and make this a step by 0.1. Okay. And what happens if I change the DSCR and I want to see what happens to the equity IRR? Now, if you did a regular old data table, you'd put an equal sign to the equity IRR and you'd select this area and you'd go to data and what if analysis and data table. And of course it wouldn't work because notice how I had to think about that for a minute. It wouldn't work because, and I can press F9 and okay, I did something really brilliant. I stopped the stupid video in the, and then now I'm redoing it. So at least I'm redoing what I did before. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use some VBA. We're going to go from, you can see I'm a little pissed. I'm going to go from row 41 to row 47. 41 to 47. And I'm going to make a loop. That's what you can do with VBA. You make a loop. It's called a for next loop. You go for, F-O-R, and row, or whatever you want to say. Simone, 41, row, no, Simone, for Simone equals 41 to 47. Okay? And then once you are going around the row, while you're going around the row, which is between the for and something called the next, your row is changing. I'm going to use the word row. And each time I press DSCE instead of DSCR, each time we do this, we're going to make this, and this is exactly what this does. We're going to, oops, 1.2. We're going to make the DSCR change every time we do that. And then after it changes, we're going to see what happens to the equity IRR. Now, if I change this to 1.1 and press the button, I didn't press the button. That doesn't change. We have to run a goal seek, and then it changes. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, and to do this, you can press Alt and F11, and you get into the VBA stuff, and you press sub one way. Okay, and then I'm doing it fairly quickly. The very first time I did it took me a long time. For row equal 41 to 47. I have no idea how, when I first made my first loop in Fortran or C or any of this. Okay, that's a for next loop. Okay, you need both of those. And there are all sorts of ways to do loops in Excel, and everybody does this fancy way. I do things a simple, old-fashioned way. Sorry if you're going to do something really much fancier. And then I'm indenting, that doesn't matter. And then I'm going to put cells, a range, just like we have up here, except this time I'm going to put range DSCR. Now I forgot to name two things. I need to name ranges just like we did for the goal seek. DSCR, I hope I spelled it correctly, shift right, shift control F3, and it says the right column, so it's going to name this DSCR. And then I'm going to do the same with equity IRR. Don't forget the Q. Shift right, shift control F3, enter. Alt F11 again to get back my thing. Range DSCR equals cells, and then if I put row here, what happens? It first does 41. It does. It first takes, that's better, I suppose, 41, then 42, then 43. The way people use the word do. When I go to a restaurant, they say, I'll do a taco. What the hell is that? I got off track. It says cells row, and then we put the column, and the column is always up here. It's in column I. Now, I happen to know that J is 10, so I know that I is 9. It's about the only thing I know, I think. I hope I got that right. Okay, and then we go the other way and put cells, and you put row, and it goes around all the rows, and then you put 10, and you put equal range EQIRR. And then you've made a data table, and it doesn't have all the shit that stupid Excel data table has. And then you can put up here, well, if we do this, let's just do this one. I said again. Let's just, whatever it is. Oh, God. Let's put a little button here and make it go to this one-way data table. Of course, you could put and then it just puts, but it puts all the same things in because we haven't done the goal seek. So to make the goal seek work, you can just put the name of the function here, and then so that's for Simone. That is kind of a basic a starting VBA with for next and cells, and they're behind so much of this. Now let's do something a little fancier, and then I think I'm going to stop the video after I make this. Now, the last time, this was just horrible form, because of course if I insert a row or a column, it won't work anymore, but I'm going to put the tenor. I'm going to go from 10 to 12 to 14 to 16 to 19, 18 to 20. And we can see, does the tenor work? Is the tenor more important, or the tenor or the DSCR? So I better select this, Shift Control F3, blah blah blah, and then we're going to make a loop that goes around the columns. Okay, and I think here's what I'm going to do to fix that. I'm going to put something called start row, and then I'm going to put end row, and then I'm going to put start column, and then I'm going to put end column. And then I'm going to just put an equal sign and go to what the start row is, which is this one. I'm starting in the table, and I'm going to put the row function for the end row. It doesn't matter, of course, what. And then I'm going to do the same thing. It doesn't matter, I was about to say, what the which column you take, if it's a row, and if it's the column like this, it doesn't matter which row. And then we select this whole area. Oops. Shift Control F3. Okay, and then we're going to make another loop. Now this loop, okay, we can start with our one-way data table. You notice that I should have probably used the Alt F11, but I was kind of lazy and just did it the way I used to do it. Okay, oops. So let's make a subroutine called two-way. Okay, and in this ups, okay, we need to put the end sub. Now the first thing we can do is fix this crap. And we can put, instead of 41, we put range, and then you put a double inverted comma, and you put start row. And then you put over here, you put range, and you put a double inverted comma, and you put end row. Okay, and then up here, this gets a little bit trickier. Instead of column 9, we put range, and we put start column, and then put -1. Okay, and then it does the goal seek and all that stuff. But we want to go around the columns too, so you make another for loop for column this time. You could put column, I think, even if it's an Excel function, because we did it with row. Range, and we put, this time we put start call to range. Is that hard? It was for me at first, without the E, because you have to remember to put the double inverted commas in and all that stuff, you know. And then we're going to define the tenor instead. Tenure, should I say tenure? I don't know. And then we put it up here. Okay. We define the name. I hope we. I'll say we when I make a mistake. And then here, but that's got cells. We put range, and we put start row, and then this is the tricky thing. You have to put -1, and then you put column. Okay, and do you think it's going to work the first time? I doubt it. If it works, it's almost, I would say, cheating. And of course, I made a mistake here, because this cells that you're going to put into the data table now is got the row and the column. So it's going to first go around the column, then go around the row, and let's try it. Normally, this time I'm being so brave, I can hardly believe it. And I'm going to assign this macro to two-way, and I'm going to press the button, Oops. Oh, well, that almost doesn't count as a hit. Okay, and what's going on? Oh no. Oh shoot. Okay. It's taking way, way too long. Ah, it actually did work. And why it all prints out at one time like that? Hmm. And let's do one other thing. Let's say I want to put a spinner box for some reason on this number. Okay, this 110. All right, so let's just make a spinner box that goes from, how about 90 to the maximum number. Let's put 120 and let's put 90. And we normally would go from one sheet to another sheet, but we're not making any graphs, at least not in a right now. And then I'm going to right click and copy this and put this down to the here maybe, and I'll put CFADS, and we'll put an equal sign and go up to the number. Okay, and this time what you could do is right click and assign this, so whenever we change something, we'll redo the two-way table. So I'm going to change this to 91. Now it's taking a little bit too long, but it's showing us what it's doing, and I hope you get the idea. And I'm going to make one other kind of point here. If this was a regular old Excel data table, this would not work. Now, I'm going to, this is, okay, I forgot my rule. The DSCR, I moved over here. And then our rule is if you want the x-axis to appear, you leave a blank. So you press alternate F1 and it shows with a different, if the tenor is 20 years, we get, a higher, I assume, a higher IRR. And if the DSCR is 1.1, that's our range. If the DSCR is 1.7, there's a much lower thing. And you could, I guess, switch the row and the column, and put here's the tenor and the DSCR effect of the tenor, and you can see how it's a bigger effect, and you can't make these kind of graphs with the horrible old Excel data table because it puts something right in the middle there, and to get rid of it's a real pain. So I guess I'll leave that here and I'll stop the video.